If you don't 100% clearly feel that you are successful, then you are not successful yet. And this was the first time where I felt 100%. There's always this discussion, what is most important, the product, the team, or the business or so? Of course, all is important, but now I clearly say the most important thing is.
So welcome to the third and final part of this series of the outstanding life of the entrepreneur Franz Buchenberger. He built, scaled and exited several businesses in a row. So his career was a roller coaster with a lot of ups and downs. In this episode, we figure out and learn how he pivoted towards success and building one of the 10 fastest growing startups in Germany and ultimately exited this company for 48 million euros. So the next software company was a news-related company, right?
Oh, it was another concept, right? So this time we started it, I think, just to have fun again and use all our learnings. So again, I took two of my previous co-founders, people with whom I worked already some 20 years before, genius engineers. And we started a third company. And in the beginning, we simply did not know what to do. And this was when all these mobile things started in 2012 and so, right? And location-based services and gamification and so on. And I came out of 7 years of large enterprise business from Fujitsu. And I said, let's do something completely different. Let's build some app consumer games, which is the opposite of what we did before, right? So we had a year of learning where my engineers friends had to learn app programming and I had to learn about app store marketing and dynamics and so on. So this was interesting, learning about the kind of first steps of this completely new world, which was just evolving. And we incorporated a US company because I thought we would go to the US market anyway. And so we built some games, something like Quiz Duel or something like this. But it was not successful, and then we pivoted to a news aggregation app. It was like a year later.
First pivot, right?
First pivot, yeah,
First
2
pivot.
games, so if you count, it's probably more then. And it was a news aggregation app with some AI technology included in it, and it was really, really compelling product. Everybody loved it.
I remember a talk from you at the Mobile Monday in Munich, right? About it.
Yeah. I think it was the best news app that ever existed. I really believe that. Because it was aggregating news from all sources, basically from all publications, and then sorted it into categories. And we had text summarization technologies which condensed long kind of articles into something that fit on a mobile screen. And it had a really good graphical user interface. I found the best app developer in Germany, in Freiburg, and convinced him to join. After 2 years, he was recruited from Apple, and they brought him over to Cupertino.
Oh, wow.
But he was really in charge of this wonderful kind of product experience and did it very well. So we had this great product. We became number 1 in the German App Store overall, not just in the news category. We internationalized it. We became number 1 in, I think, the Irish store and some other app stores. But we couldn't figure out a business model that was really generating a lot of revenue beside displaying some ads.
Interesting. So focusing on the product in the beginning, the tech, the product, right?
Yeah.
And building something that excites you and that you really believed in.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a gap between like the product and the market. And you lacked product market fit at that point.
Mm-hmm.
How did you solve it?
It was not so much product market fit, right? We had this because we got more and more users and all the users were kind of enthusiastic.
More about the revenue engine behind it?
It was the revenue engine that was the problem, right? We had good retention rates and everything. And we learned everything about all these funnels, which we used also later on, right? How to build a funnel, how you kind of feed it and so on. And then we had an ad marketing
But it was
company.
consumer business, right?
It was consumer business, yeah.
Okay, so first one was consumer business. No, was B2B, right?
It was B2B2C, right?
B2B2C.
Yeah.
The second one was B2B.
B2B and then really to employees more, B2B2E if you like.
Okay, and
Then I was in B to enterprise, B2B at Fujitsu. And this was first time B2C really,
B2C.
which I found interesting. I always like to do new things, right? And so we had somebody who was marketing and selling or bringing in the ads and generating revenues. Didn't work well. We changed the company, worked better. Revenues were increasing, but we could not generate substantial revenues. And we couldn't figure out how to really scale this to like tens of millions of users. And that was needed to make this business model work. And so we pivoted again, this time only the revenue model to a B2B2C model, basically white labeling our technology and selling it to publishers.
Makes sense, yes.
So we sold to German and international publishers. At some point of time, I think 70% of the daily news publishers in Germany were using our technology.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of names you would know were using it. But you couldn't see us. It was all kind of rebranded. It looked like Augsburger Allgemeine or Passauer News or Badische Zeitung or whatever. And so we sold it in a SaaS B2B model to those companies. And this was generating more revenue. And so again, we became about profitable with a small team, 7-8 people. But it was not super fast in scaling. And so we were constantly looking for some other additions. I think at some point of time we were tempted to go in the direction of what you were doing, right? Like social hub, social media aggregation and such things also, but never did it. And then I think in 2015, we found this idea of distributing news not through the app, but through WhatsApp. So that then became our next pivot, that we offered WhatsApp services initially to our publisher customers. So they were our first test group. Still remember, I called 5 of our publisher customers with the news apps and said, well, if we give you a WhatsApp service for 400 euros per month, would you buy it? And all 5 said yes.
Oh, that's a good test.
So we built this product on top of what we had already. And in this case, it took us really just like 6 weeks from idea to first beta product. And after 2 months, we already started with those 5 publishers to generate revenues, right?
Maybe how many years from when you started, like gaming, pivot news to publishers, right? As a B2C, then B2B business, and then pivot to the WhatsApp newsletter model, right?
Yeah, it was 2012, 13, 14 for all these kind of early experiments. And 2015, in May, I think that's when we started our first WhatsApp service. And yeah, in the 4th year, basically. We had raised money from the beginning, to touch on that. So I think we had raised not much, a bit over 1 million. And I just try to remember whether we did a second round with the WhatsApp business already or still with the news business, maybe some convertible loan or something. So we had raised some money and consumed this money. We did not have much money left, but we were roughly break even. But we needed acceleration, right? Yep, and
then something changed, right?
Yeah, what changed then was that for the first time in my life, I really experienced superior product market fit, right?
So what is this business actually about? So at the time, WhatsApp was one of the hot new trends out there in the social media world, the messenger game. And what he did is he actually jumped on this trend and figured out a way to build a newsletter based on WhatsApp. So all these WhatsApp newsletters land in your WhatsApp inbox on your phone next to your mother, your friends, and all the other people writing you. So of course, the open rates and the conversion rates are much, much higher than with every email newsletter out there. So by providing this service, he actually solved a big problem and put up a great gain for all the business using it.
And if you listen to US venture capitalists, there's always this discussion, what is most important, the product, the team, or the business or so? Of course, all is important, but now I clearly say the most important thing is the market and the product market fit, right? If you find this, everything else follows automatically in a way, right?
Mm-hmm. Because there's this tension in the market, something that sucks out of the solution, out of like a software vendor like you. And this is like...
It was really market pull for the first time. And I had observed this with US companies in Silicon Valley, right? You could see how certain companies were growing and having kind of success. There's another saying which says, if you don't clearly can feel that you're successful, you are not. And you're very often in a stage where you feel, well, it's okay, right, what we do, and if it improves, it gets better and so on.
That's a very important sentence. Can you maybe repeat it?
Yeah, if you don't 100% clearly feel that you are successful, then you are not successful yet, right? And this was the first time where I felt 100% and everybody felt, wow, we are really successful, right? This is success feels completely different to this 70% success or whatever, right?
What happened then?
From then on, we just grew like crazy, right? And in hindsight, Deloitte also is always doing this kind of analysis of fast-growing companies. And over several years, we became one of the 20 fast-growing companies in Europe and 10 fast-growing companies in Germany, right? Basically, we started with zero, and over 3 years, we went to a monthly recurring revenue of 1 million with a 30% profit margin, right? We had like 300,000 of monthly profit. And this is accumulating quickly, right? So in a year.
The growth,
yeah.
You had the company, the team, the product, right? You had the growth and you had the profit, right? That's like a wonderful setup.
Yep.
Like this was a phase of 2 or 3 years, you said?
Started in 15, going on 16, 17, 18, until 19 or so, several years, yeah.
So you were trying different things, trying to find like the product market fit, trying to find the revenue, the growth engine, right? Pivoting the business multiple times, and then you hit something and it felt like now something is different, now it's happening. Oh my God, this is what all of the people are talking about.
Yeah.
Fast ramp up, and then what happened then?
Well, we focused on this a lot, which I think is the number one thing you can do right, is just if you hit on something, forget everything else, right? So our news aggregation business, we had running contracts, so they continued to run for 1 or 2 years, but we stopped selling it. And then after 1 or 2 years, we announced to our couple publishers that we want to get out of it, right? So we finished it for good. But we focused completely on this kind of WhatsApp business. And we hired in 2017, I think we went from 15 people to 60 people or something like this, right? So hired very quickly a lot of young people, sales from different industries, hotel business, finance industry, because we had our recipe how it would work, right? And then we really, and that was very essential for me and my interest, we built this business machine in a way, right? We found a very good VP of marketing who was building up a great marketing team. I ran the sales team, also had a kind of computer science background, but I had enough experience to really kind of build up this sales machine, right? It was a lot of data-driven and system-driven, so we could measure everything, fine-tune everything. And we had a still small, at the peak, I think 8 or 9 people in engineering, a small team, but the product was not that essential really, right? The first product was really rocket science, this virtual world stuff in a way, right? Really world-leading technology. In this company, it was just a sufficiently good product. And so we had all the ingredients together.
The product you need to fulfill the needs of the market.
Yeah. And well, one point, of course, which was super helpful was we had basically a monopoly, right? Because at that time, WhatsApp was not offering any APIs and kind of interfaces. So what we did was in a legal gray area. And basically, we had to hack into the WhatsApp infrastructure, which was, if you look at it, really kind of illegal. But it was also very difficult technically because WhatsApp had all these kind of algorithms trying to kill spam, right? And so they closed down all the numbers which looked like spam numbers. And so we were in a constant fight with the WhatsApp algorithms to be able to offer a stable service, right?
To deliver all the newsletters from your customers.
Newsletters from the customers, other applications afterwards without WhatsApp automatically kind of closing down our cards in a way, right? SIM numbers. And from all I know, there were probably more than 100 companies worldwide trying the same, what we did, but we were the only one who really succeeded in that, right?
Yes.
And there was a lot of secrets in that, but now it's all gone and kind of disappeared. So I can say a lot of companies hacked in the network infrastructure, which was always a fight against WhatsApp changing something, right? And we worked with a different technology, which were kind of virtualization. So we set up like a SIM card farm where each behaved like a mobile phone.
Wow.
And WhatsApp
like in the basement of the office, or
not in the basement, all in the cloud, right? At the peak, we had 400 servers, which we kind of rented from kind of hosting companies. And we had, I think, 27,000 virtual SIM cards.
wow.
In the beginning, we went to supermarkets and bought all the available SIM cards. If you go to the cashier, right, there were all these things where you had like 20 SIM cards.
I remember, yes.
They always took all. Went to the next one and took all. So we had several hundreds until this did not scale anymore. Mm-hmm. And then we did a deal with telcos and then with virtual SIM cards, but we had 27,000 emulators running on 400 servers.
Crazy.
And it was stable, and everything else was always killed down, right? So we had a global monopoly, basically.
That's why they choose you, right?
Yeah. And that was also why we could very quickly internationalize. We had great business in India, for example. And everybody tells you in India you can't make money because there is so little money and they are so much pushing on the price. But us having a monopoly, we also got decent money from large Indian companies. And so, we quickly got over 1,000 customers worldwide. We had more and more international business. We built up a partner business. So this was growing like crazy, right? And was perfect fun for everyone, right? So this was just paradise.
Talking about the roller coaster, what happened then?
Well, the Damocles sword that was always above us, of course, was WhatsApp, right?
Yes.
And it was not just one sword, but it was several ones. Mm-hmm. And they all fell at some point of time on us. So one was simply the legal situation. So sometime in 2017 or so, I got a legal writing from, I think it was already Facebook then, not Meta yet, but Facebook had acquired WhatsApp. And they told us what we were doing was illegal. We had a lot of visibility at that point of time. So very large companies in Germany, public companies, Deutsche Telekom, Deutsche Bank, everybody was using our service, right?
It's the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah. And so this was already all known to the WhatsApp team already, that there was this tiny company in Germany succeeding in what otherwise they always could kind of prohibit. And so they wrote us this legal letter that we had to cease and desist, basically stop our business. So I got myself a lawyer and we kind of wrote back, and what we're doing is good and we're helping and whatever. So we had an exchange which we extended as much as we could over a long period of time. And finally, they stopped writing back to us. So sometimes a problem just goes away if you're persistent enough, right?
Interesting.
Was, of course, scary, and I could not even tell a lot of people. I don't know. I think I did not even tell all our investors and not the employees.
How did you manage to sleep?
I sleep very well, so this is one of the things that you really need as a CEO. I know when this IPO failed in the first company, my wife did not sleep all night, and she said she was just watching me sleeping all night.
How can you do that?
Yeah. But we had also raised more money at the early stage, and we became profitable very quickly with this WhatsApp business. But since I had this bad experience in the first company, I wanted to have more money in the bank, right?
Yeah.
So at that point of time, without any real need, I raised 5 million euros, put it on the bank and never touched it.
Wow.
So when we were finally acquired, we had more money in the bank than these 5 million.
Wow, more than you raised?
More than we raised, yeah. Overall, we did not consume really any money, right? Everything we raised, we had in the bank account when we were kind of acquired. But yeah, we had investors, raised more money. And of course, I thought if I tell all the investors that we have this cease and desist letter, or if I tell the employees, this will be a disaster. Of course, I had to inform my board and kind of tell them and discuss with the co-founders. But so this period went over and this first Damocles sword disappeared, right?
Talking about acquisition, how does it happen? Did they call you and you put up the phone and say, "Hi, this is Franz. How are you doing?"
There are different ways. The first company we sold was really somebody knew us and contacted me from this acquiring company, right? Yes. It was a German guy of this British company. Of course, you have also companies who are specialized in helping you to sell, right? And
like M&A companies?
M&A companies, right? And so when we had this kind of high growth phase and then also kind of approved by Deloitte and so on and doing our marketing, we got tremendous interest from investors and M&A companies, right? I think I got emails from investors every day and M&A calls and emails every week or something like this.
Are you open to sell your business?
Yeah. And I always said, no, at the moment, nice to be in touch, but no interest.
Autoresponder.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, I did not want to spend a lot of time on that. Yeah. And the acquisition that really happened for this company was that I was contacted by a guy who said he is the CEO of a public company and he's visiting Munich. It's a Swedish company. He lives in the US and he's in Munich, whether I would be prepared to talk to him. And since he sounded like a nice guy, I said, yeah, why not? And invited him.
And you met in Munich?
We met in Munich, yeah. But that was, if I stay at this detail level, in 2019. So I said in 2015 we started, 2019 it went up, but we also had always these other Damocles swords that something might go wrong technically, right? Mm-hmm. Very early in our business, I think that was still in 2015, we migrated to a new technology. And in 10 minutes, that killed all our cards. Basically, it killed all our business early on. And we had to restart with all our customers. Interestingly, we lost only like 5% of our customers. They had lost all their subscriber lists. They had to start again.
Really? Only 5%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it was so compelling and we had very good customer support and we're close to the customers, right? Also good learning. But we always had this risk that WhatsApp would, in a moment, close down our 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 cards or so, right? Mm-hmm. And clearly they wanted to do it, but couldn't do it. But that was always a big risk. And sometimes we had partial problems that usually happened when I was on vacation with my wife. And I always got an email alarm which did a sound on my phone if a card was closed down. Mm-hmm. And I remember sometimes it was bing, 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 bing. And then I thought, okay, now it's a new kind of super crisis.
Okay.
Always in the middle of kind of vacation.
5 rings in a row, I have to go now.
Yeah. But we could always kind of solve these issues. Mm-hmm. But then in, I think 2019, we were approached by WhatsApp directly and they said they would start a partner program. And they know of us, we are those bad guys, but very successful and interesting. And they would invite us to join their partner program. So yeah, of course, sure. So we became one of the first WhatsApp partners. But that had several implications. One was we had to migrate everything over to WhatsApp API technology, which was a big problem because we had all this robust technology with 27,000 cards, which worked perfectly well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we had to migrate over at a certain deadline to a very immature WhatsApp API, which had a lot of problems and instabilities and whatever, right? So that was a little bit of a technical roller coaster. But then the bigger thing was that we had different use cases on WhatsApp: newsletter marketing, customer support, chatbots, and so on. And we had an ongoing discussion with WhatsApp whether this WhatsApp newsletter marketing, which is like email newsletter marketing, but 10 times more efficient, whether this would be permitted. And they were in this mood, this might be perceived as spam. And we said, it's no spam, it's all opt-in and opt-out and so on, which is true and so on. But in the end, they decided, like in a 50-50 decision in the US, that they would kind of prohibit newsletter marketing on WhatsApp. And so they gave us a deadline like 9 months later. But this was in the beginning of 2020, this deadline. And it basically killed 2/3 of our business, of revenue, of our customers. All this stuff which was growing like crazy was suddenly disappeared, right? So we had to decrease cost again, lay off good people and so on, and refocus on other use cases which were permitted and where we also had built by now appropriate technology, like for customer service through messengers. It was not WhatsApp anymore. We had supported by this time 10 different messengers, everything from Telegram to Apple to Facebook to whatever, Viber and so on. But this was another big kind of hit on us, that they did not allow this newsletter marketing, which was in a way like this kind of IPO problem in my first company. This was another one which was completely out of our control and almost kind of destroyed us. but we were already sufficiently prepared and smart enough and had good customer relationships. So we also survived this kind of downfall. But suddenly we went from 1 million monthly recurring revenue with 300,000 profit to 400,000 monthly revenue with 200,000 losses, right?
Wow.
And we had this more than 6, 7, 8 million on the bank account, the investment plus everything we saved. But suddenly we started to kind of decrease our cash, which was okay. No kind of immediate problem. But we had to decrease costs. So we did not replace people who resigned. A lot of people got kind of worried in the situation, so they left the company. It was not that we had to kind of fire people, but we did not replace people who were leaving. And getting back to this kind of story, this kind of CEO of this company came in 2019. And I was very open and honest with him. And I told him we have this discussion with WhatsApp. I don't know what will come out. We might be great because we will be one of the best WhatsApp partners, but we might also get into problems. And until this is resolved, I don't know how we would value our company, right? So we agreed we would kind of stop this discussion about acquisition.
Very honest.
Yeah, but I knew exactly I would just waste my time, right? Because we would get to this point about the valuation and how do you value a company that might go out of business while you do the acquisition process, right? And in parallel, I was in 2019 doing really a funding round, a huge one in the US, right? Due to my network in California, all the friends I had from earlier times, I got access to all the top VCs, really everybody who are the kind of best VCs in the Valley. And I met with many of them. And they told me, well, they have never seen a company which was growing so quickly and still be profitable, or growing and being profitable at all. We're looking for something that was wrong almost, right? Made them suspicious to see such a company. But there was no problem beside this WhatsApp risk. And then I was starting to get first offer letters, which looked really great. And then shortly afterwards, we got this kind of decision from WhatsApp that we would have to stop what was most valuable in our business.
Wow.
So I had to stop all these funding rounds with the US companies, all the acquisition talks, and in a way, not pivot, but really focus on use cases which were more difficult than newsletter marketing, right? And that's what we did then in 2020 mostly. And we did it quite well. We did not reach the previous revenue level again, but we kind of had increasing revenues. And we're again kind of approaching profitability or break even, right? And then in the beginning of 21, this kind of CEO of this Swedish company approached me again. And we talked, and I said, okay, we're in a different situation now. We are smaller, we have lower growth, but we would be interested in discussing about an acquisition.
So you approached him?
I don't even know. I think we exchanged some
You just kept in touch.
LinkedIn messages, congratulations on this and that. And that's how the kind of discussion restarted.
So you build a relationship basically, and then out of this relationship evolves the next step.
And this was an SMS company, one of the two big ones globally, public one. And in 21, the CEO came in 2019, and his mission was to accelerate growth. And this went up like crazy, right? At the peak, they went like he started when they were public with 1 billion valuation, not small. And it peaked at 27 billion, really huge business, right? Bigger than most German companies. One of the biggest or fastest growing stocks in Europe. And his strategy was to acquire companies. With his huge valuation, he could get quickly billions for some shares. And he did 3 big acquisitions, each over 1 billion euros. And we were comparably tiny one compared to this, right? Just some kind of additional thing because we had some interesting new technology. And however, at the beginning of 21, we had some discussions between us founders. And I told them, I don't think that we can become huge anymore, right? After this newsletter stop. Before it was very clear we would become a unicorn, right? We were growing so quickly, we could raise money quickly, we could accelerate everything. So if WhatsApp would have decided that we can continue, we would have become a unicorn for sure. But not in that situation anymore. And I said, well, I don't want to go public from my previous experience. It will all become tougher, growth and so on. And we agreed that we would be interested in selling the company. And so I was also getting in touch with some M&A banks and so on, but early stage, when there was this kind of little bit random contact again with this Swedish company. And this evolved very nicely. We got very well along. The kind of due diligence worked well. And so in the end, this led to the acquisition without us exploring many alternatives, really.
Interesting. So was there a structured M&A process behind it? Or was it like, this feels like a great deal, let's do it?
Well, since they were doing in parallel these 3 huge acquisitions, right? They were running acquisitions like a machine in a way. Mm-hmm. They had several founders, and the founders were in charge of each acquisitions. I had my captain, kind of one of the co-founders, great guy. But of course, if you acquire companies over 1 billion, this machine is super, super complicated, right?
Yep.
And we were just thrown into the same machine, which was terrible for us because it was super complex, right? Mm-hmm. And on top of this, I had started the company as a US company, later kind of having German subsidiaries. So what this public Swedish company bought was a US company following Delaware law, us, making it also more complicated. So we need to work with US lawyers and kind of international consultants. So the whole acquisition process was a little bit of a nightmare, right? So this went from March first contact until September signing and November closing, so 8 months or something like this. And it was basically, for me, it was a full-time job on top of my CEO job, right?
Back to the 100-something hours.
Yeah, ago. Maybe not 100, but it was really kind of very, very time-consuming, right? And it was not like 8 months, but at least the last 3 months or something like this was super, super stressful, especially because a lot of discussion happened during night with California. So I had my day job as CEO and my night job as acquisition leader.
Chief acquisition officer.
Yep.
Interesting. So to me, it feels a little bit like you made the decision what's best for the company in terms of looking at the market and the potential what's there, right? Because like this company, like it wants to grow usually, like a company that doesn't grow, it dies usually. You were looking at the market and the potential for the company and then decided maybe it's best to put it into the hands of a bigger company that can actually accelerate the growth or like help the business to grow something. Can you maybe share your thoughts there? Because it didn't feel to me like you say, okay, now is a good time to sell, right? Let's cash out, right? That was not the thinking. It felt differently, right? So
well, first of all, you look at risks, right? And there were kind of suddenly there were always these hidden risks of legal risk, technical risk, and so on. But now we had new risks. One risk was this: WhatsApp, Facebook was going into this market, right? They wanted to make money with WhatsApp with businesses. Before it was purely a consumer offering, did not generate much revenue at all. But now they decided strategically they want to make money with businesses, right?
Yeah.
And if a company like Facebook needs to generate money, they're talking about billions, right? So it was clear this would change the market completely. This will become a big market, but WhatsApp will take its share, right? And in the worst case, take it over what we're doing completely, right? That's always this platform risk you have, that your underlying platform takes over your business.
So it felt like a good timing.
That was one big risk, yeah, good timing. A second one was, since they were opening up the API, it was clear that a lot of companies, much larger ones than us, would go in the same game, right? We would get a lot of competition, and that happened afterwards, right? And the third one was, since they killed our best use case, which they did not understand at that time, we did not have this kind of super product market fit in a monopoly anymore. But we had to fight for more complicated use cases which were useful and had product market fit, but which had longer sales cycle and longer growth cycles like customer support, higher integration needs with the customer infrastructure and so on. So everything became kind of slower, right? And so to me, it felt like this is now becoming a level of magnitude, kind of order of magnitude more complicated. And so it's probably better to get out if we find the right context and situation, right? It was not sell as quickly as possible or to anyone. We wanted to find somebody who fits to the company, who fits to the team. And always with this kind of perspective in a larger context, as you said, we can do this more successfully, right? A company that's worth 27 billion can invest $1 billion in such a business, right?
Yeah,
where we would
sense.
raise something like maybe 50 million or so, right?
So you didn't feel like you have the best cards at your hand compared to like the bigger companies that might go in?
Yeah. And at that point, my view was we always had this kind of joke in the company. We want world leadership or world domination or so, right? But we were the kind of small monopoly leader in this small business. And my idea was with this large company, we could really become a global leader and scale this up to a really huge kind of level.
What was the valuation of the company?
Oh, it's public knowledge, so you can read it, so I can also share it. The company was valued with all the cash. You have a valuation and then you get all the cash that you have in the bank. So I think altogether it was something like 53 million or so.
Wow.
Which is not huge in a way, right? I have a lot of friends in California who get this in their seed round, but then they also need to have a huge exit, right? But for us, it was a successful exit. What was interesting, a few things to highlight was, right, again, this window of opportunity, right? When you watched the internet market in 21, you could see that all the valuations were going up like crazy, right? If I look just at this acquiring company, it went from 1 billion in 2018 to 27, but most of the growth happened in 21. So this was getting extreme and reminded me a lot of this kind of 2020, 2000 feeling when the internet bubble burst, right? So I had the feeling this will not go on for very long until it will kind of, get into trouble. There was no idea of COVID and something like this and of Ukraine war and all these kind of negative factors coming in later. But simply how the tech world evolved was already a little bit crazy, right? And so we said, let's find an appropriate context for us. And that's what we did, and in the end succeeded then, right? And this was this kind of 50 million, which was a good success for all investors, for all founders. One downside was we did a deal which was partly cash and partly shares of the acquiring company, right? So there was some discussion how much would be shares. And we ended up with 30% of the value was in shares. And looking back, this was pretty much the peak of their valuation, right? So the shares we received, we got at a very, very high valuation. And then the point is you have to pay tax for these shares, even if you cannot sell them for, in our case, 2 years or so, right?
Oh, wow.
So I spent significant money on paying tax for shares, which now are, because this company, like the whole tech world, crashed, right? And currently, I think my share value is less than 50% of the tax I paid on these shares. So from a current perspective, I would have been, and my other co-founders, same, right? Would have been better off if we would not have received any shares at all.
Wow, that's crazy.
But at the same time,
you don't plan for something like that.
No.
It's not possible.
But at the same time, I'm convinced that the shares will recover. There are some reasons, which is a completely different story.
It's a good company.
Why I think that the shares are hugely undervalued. So I will keep them for however long.
So how did the second checkmark, how did it feel, the second checkmark?
Well, it was the same checkmark, success, right? So in that sense, the first is always in that sense different. But it was another 10 years where we worked for this company, right? And especially after Fujitsu with the big salary, we went down to, as I said, like, depending whether I took my real salary or what I got offered, 40 to 20% of the salary, right? So even if I take just what I got on my bank account before, I worked for 10 years at 40% of my previous salary, and my co-founders also worked below their salaries, right? And for me, it was always super important. I had 2 co-founders with whom I worked since my first company, right? So one thing which was super important for me was that they would get a good financial reward for believing in all my pivots and nonsense, because all these were always my ideas. And a lot of them turned out not to work, right? But they always stayed loyal. So it was very important for me that they would get some decent money and also their families, right? To some extent also for my family, right? Because, well, my wife asked a few times, why didn't you stay at Fujitsu without all this kind of extra work and all the risk and so on, right? So that's also nice. But then you also, and you understand this as a shareholder, you also have an obligation to your investors, right? So I had partly institutional investors, but it was also like family money of family businesses, not my family. So you don't want those people to lose money on your ideas, right? Being able to give them a positive return on investment.
It's the opposite of the check mark.
Yeah. Because some of my investors over time also became friends to me, right? And I did not want to disappoint them. And then, of course, you also want the team to be successful, right? So with the transition to this large company, I could also negotiate a big salary increase. So they also worked in a way almost below market salary, often young people. I think they are now at least on par with market value, or because it's a large public company, maybe better off than with many comparable companies. So there are so many places where you can do check marks with an exit, right? And the financial reward you get yourself, for me, that was never super important in a way, right? Well, I think I had a good living with or without the exit. But so many other people who trusted you and depended on you and so on. And with this check mark, yeah, you feel super happy and super lucky in a way that this worked.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that's amazing. Something you can be really, really proud of. And like, if you hear the whole story, I think it becomes so obvious that this is not like an overnight success, right? That every business had to be built in a roller coaster kind of way, ups and downs, right? If you would summarize the learnings of the first business, the second business, the third business, if you could, like, one learning from each company, what would you put in a bag to give it to like founders who are just starting out?
Well, the first one was this window of opportunity, right? And in the third one, we had also a window of opportunity. I said we did the deal at the peak of their valuation, right? But we were also pretty much the last acquisition they did, right? Because afterwards, their stock price dropped significantly. So I think if we would have been delayed 1 or 2 months, the acquisition would not have happened. And in a way, I was from the first company, I was aware of this problem, and I accelerated all the negotiations and the due diligence and everything like crazy, right? That's why I spent nights with US lawyers. I could have said, well, let's discuss next week or so, right? But I wanted to get it done on Friday evening. So first one was window of opportunity, and don't let things slip which are time critical. And they're always with a startup. Second one, learning was it doesn't matter how much energy and time you invest. It's not completely irrelevant, but the first one, we spent a lot more energy and so on, and it failed. And the second one was just better circumstances, doing things better, having more experience.
So watch the different forces in the market, whether there's enough wind for sailing.
Yeah. So doing the right things and doing them right is much more important than working hard. And that was also something I always told the team in the third company. I don't expect them to work more than 40 hours, and most of them did not, unless there was some trade fair or some kind of exception, right? But we really tried to have this work-life balance with 40 hours per week. And I always told them, I don't expect you, already at the kind of entrance discussion with new employees, I don't expect you to work more hours, but I expect you to focus completely on your work, right? Be super efficient. And
if you're working, we're working.
Yeah. So this was really part of our culture then, that we were super efficient and super optimized, but we did not spend kind of huge hours on that. So that was learning from the second company, that you can also be successful without working like crazy. And the third company, I think this was an eternal pivot game in a way. So one of our investors once told me he sees me as the master of pivots. He has like 70 investments, but none is pivoting so crazily, right? But we were always going from one jumping board to the next, right? We reused technology, we reused customers, we reused whatever we learned in a way. So it was never starting from scratch again. It was always starting at a higher level.
But isn't this, couldn't it be seen as some kind of consistency in its own as well? Because pivoting, as long as you find the right fit in terms of product markets and where the wind is right, and where's some acceleration in the market, it's a consistent way, right? Even if it feels like a very agile approach.
Yeah, well, pivot, you typically talk about pivots if it's large change of direction, right? Like doing some completely different product or at least changing the business model completely. At a small level, you pivot every day, which is called optimization or efficiency increases or whatever, right? And I'm a big optimizer, right? So everybody's kind of kidding me, but I'm the fan of Excel, right? I put everything into Excel and optimize. And so I think it's a core skill. If you're good at pivoting as a CEO and as a team, and you need a good team for this, right? Because it always introduces uncertainty and new risks and change and so on. Mm-hmm. But in our company, pivoting became a part of the culture really and change, right? So we were super, super agile in a way.
So if you would like grab all those learnings from the first 3 companies and 2 check marks, right? So if you would decide to build another one, how would you approach it?
Well, it's a possibility. I still consider to build another one, right? How would I approach it? Well, I think there's no simple answer to it. I think there's so many learnings in different areas, right? How you set up the company, how you fund the company, how you define the initial product knowing that you will pivot away from it, how you set up your business models, all the sales marketing, right? Each of them you need to have a very clear picture how you want to start at least and where you're flexible and where not. So I don't know what the simple answer would be for that.
How would you test for, is there enough traction in the market that you get this pull again?
Doing it. I think there's no other answer. You need to call up potential customers and see if you're in the B2B whether they're willing to pay the money, right?
If it's 5 out of 5, it's better than like 1 out of 5.
Exactly, and you need to be very clear to yourself that everybody says, yeah, of course, I like you, I will. So you need to be very clear, would you be willing to sign a contract with me next month if I commit to this and that, right? It's not like, do you like the idea of building this new product?
That's the most important part about like customer discovery that most forget, right? They're talking about the product and the features. Do you like them, right?
Of course you like to cheat yourself, but people are friendly and it's no commitment, right? So
are you willing to invest the money in terms of exchange for this value? Then it gets a very clear answer.
Yeah.
Starting locally or going internationally like from the day one?
I like both in a way. I have done both. It depends on the overall concept, right? Because if you do something globally, right, that means you need a lot more funding. And you hardly can avoid the US market if you're here in Germany, right? That means you also need to build up a US team and location. You probably need to raise your money in the US, right? So this simple question, global or local, I've seen so many German companies who started local and then said, we will globalize, but they have already kind of messed up the whole corporate structure, right? The whole funding structure.
Yeah.
So you can very quickly see this company can never become a global leader because it was set up as a German local company and a lot of mistakes in the structure, right? So would I want to do another one with this global thing, knowing that I have different locations, all the travel implications and so on, all the funding implications? On the positive side, well, I have now the track record that I can do it and get the money and so on, right? But do I and my family personally want to do it? I have not taken this decision yet, so yeah.
Like getting funding, putting in your own money, bootstrapping, how would you do it?
I think in the beginning it's nice if you don't need external money to reach this product market fit point, but you don't need many resources for this, right?
Yes.
If you have really 2 great engineers and you can kind of cover the business side, it's probably the core team you need to get to this point. Then you don't need a lot of additional money. But then at some point of time, if you are there, then you really need to go big if you are ambitious, right? And that is something I'm a little bit sorry, which I never experienced, that I was able to invest really huge amount of money into something that is in principle working, right? That was my hope why I joined Fujitsu, and it didn't work out like planned. And this was my hope when I sold the company to this Swedish company, and it didn't work out because the market broke down and they got into trouble, right? And I watched a few of my US friends who were in this situation, right? For example, the VP marketing of my first company then became a co-founder of LinkedIn. And obviously LinkedIn was such a super growth company, right? So this is something I always missed a little bit, to see how something really scales to kind of billions or something like this.
So maybe there's the next thing.
Yeah, but the next thing is also, if you plan for something like things like this, you need to commit at least 10 years of your life, right?
That's a very good insight.
Yeah. I think you can fail fast, but you hardly succeed under 5 years, and even 5 years is rare. So more realistic is 7, 8, 10 years.
So if someone would like to start a software company, maybe choose SaaS as a business model, would you say like 5 to 10 years is a decision you have to put in order to actually get something going?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I agree.
I know very few companies that succeeded under 5 years, right? If you take my second, that was an exception, being sold in the second or third year, beginning of third year, but it was not a big success in a way, right? So you need to commit those kind of years, which, changes your whole life towards a hamster wheel again, right?
Do you have something else you would like to share?
Maybe one final thought, right? Because you asked about what was my motivation. First time it was all doing this science fiction metaverse idea. Second time, I think, was for all of us just to get this success check mark. Third time was a little bit exploratory, right? So with all what we've learned and what we can do, what can we achieve in a way, right? And we were always serious about becoming global market leader and maybe building a unicorn, not for the money, but for the impact in a way, right? But in the third case, as proven with all the pivots, it did not matter anymore so much what we did. We just wanted to build a successful business. And now with everything behind me.
So looking back at all these businesses, what are his final thoughts on how he would do it all over again? So let's reveal the final thought that's in the box.
What has become my number one criteria is I want to do something that's really, really meaningful. Because looking back at my career and looking back at most of the software industry, if you're really honest, most of those products are not as meaningful as you tend to think when you're inside, right? So do you need screen sharing? Do you need WhatsApp newsletter marketing? Do you need this and that? Not really. So, and then I find it really, really difficult to find something that's really, really meaningful, but still can be a business and can be funded, right? So that makes it a bit difficult for me at the moment to find the right idea and to commit another 10 years of my life, because it's tough to find interesting, meaningful things.
What I find really interesting is that once all the basic human needs are fulfilled, right, we strive for growth, right? So personal development, growth, learning new things, getting like things done in different ways, new experiences and everything. And once we feel like this might be enough growth, people think about contribution, about impact, how to give something back. And it's very interesting to see what will come out of that phase of your life.
Yeah, it's like a Maslow pyramid in a way, right? But a little bit different topic, but absolutely, yeah. And so I don't know if that's advice to young people to try to do something meaningful earlier. If I would live again, I certainly would try, but with all I've learned by now and as I said, with all the check marks I've achieved, maybe it's not possible otherwise. But yeah, that's something, if I would start again, fresh from university, I would look more at this kind of doing something meaningful.
So you do the shortcut.
Yeah.
Franz,
Yes.
I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope you like this 3-part series, and if you want to know more about other successful entrepreneurs, let me know and we're going to do more, but you have to tell me in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, life is a journey, let's enjoy the ride.